HHDG.
Peace, HHDG. We're on another episode of HHDG Media, the podcast. And shout out to everyone, as always, that's tuning in through our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook group, HHDG. Now, before I go any further, I want to give a condolences to the family of our longtime HHDG Facebook group family by the name of Rob Corson, who passed away this morning. Big fan of Slaughterhouse. We spoke a lot, about hip hop and the group that I just mentioned, and then finally meeting him in person, and just a big supporter and fan of the culture, and also a fan of Illmind, the producer as well. I don't want to get too much into it, but like I said, this is the type of example of a person that is he has that love of the culture, and he was always talking about hip hop. So again, rest in peace, and my condolences to his family. As always, you see me on here because of our company, HHDG Media Inc., which consists of Rock Vader KB, The Mayor, myself, Wiki, T. Smith, and also Skelly Top. As you can see in our bottom banner, you can go to our website, hhdgmedia.com, and that's where we have music, our written interviews, events, and also our merchandise. For tonight, we have a double threat repping Brooklyn, who has shown that, being streetwise, he provides his viewpoint of the world. What he's grown up, how he's grown up, what's going on in the community, the ability to, the importance, I should say, of survival in the world that we live in, and his neighborhood as well, and being able to do that through the music, through his lyricism, and also his production, which I think a lot of people need to pay close attention to, the two of them. And what's important is everyone can talk about, their life, but it's how unique you do it. And our guest for tonight has a way of intertwining everything that I spoke about in a way of, just dropping the ill rhymes and keeping the production dope as always. I'm a big fan of drums, so he definitely does a damn good job with that in his production. And his two latest projects for this year is Black Label Saga Volume 1, which dropped on July 12th, and then Volume 2, which dropped this month on August 2nd. With these two projects, and I definitely want him to, elaborate more, being that I'm the one that's listening to it, but he's the one that created it, of making songs that were from the past and putting them into a new project with new music to make it sound cohesive. So I'm definitely interested in, his breakdown of how he achieved that. With his skills, which most, if you are familiar with our guest for tonight, has worked with the likes of Marco Polo, Shy the Beat Yoda, Kuth, Ty Farris, Rock Marciano. I mean, there's more out there to name, but we'll talk about that during the interview. Which, if he's working with these artists, the talent, is going to speak for itself. These artists are not going to just work with anybody. So that's a great example of his skills and experience as well. So we're definitely going to dive into that as well. And I'm also interested in, the whole being of how important faith is in his life. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Saga. Peace, peace.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. Love the intro and condolences to your man. It's always a hard way to start the show, but it's always the one thing that we all have in common, especially in our culture as Americans, especially from New York, is hip hop. Like that's a common thread that we all share, no matter what our background is. Our love for hip hop and our experience within it and making it or listening to it or, it being the theme for our life.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah. Some people have a tough battle in life, with their health, and he was one of them, and he stood strong, no matter what. He always, didn't complain about it. He pushed through, and he's always, happy to talk about hip hop. So, that was his, that brought that, that energy, that happiness to him. So I always appreciated, talking with him about music.
Yeah, I mean, it brings happiness to a lot of people. It's got its challenges at the same time. But it's all perspective, right? So if you have a health challenge, it's really the most critical challenge you'll probably ever face in your life.
Right.
So everything else is sort of like, I mean, you have like it's not all the other stuff you don't take for granted. You have to have your respect for all those other things, and all the other things give you perspective, and they bring you joy, right? They bring happiness to your life.
Yeah.
Where sometimes we get lost in it, because we get caught in the mundane.
Absolutely. Yeah. So being one of the last things I mentioned in the intro is faith. Has that always been, part of your life?
Always. I mean, for as long as I can remember, if I wasn't connected to something bigger or larger than the superficial that we experience, just like, watching people walk to work in the morning, going to school, going through the motions of what we call civilization and society in our modern version of culture. We are going through the motions. We don't fully understand the roots of it or the nature of it. Why do we do what we do? And without the spiritual component, it all seems quite like empty and vapid to me. It seems like there's got to be something behind it. There's got to be a machine and a reason. There's got to be a purpose for what I'm doing. Even if I don't like to do it, it's serving some purpose.
Yeah.
There was once a yogi who said, like, part of the yogic tradition is when you do something, no matter what it is, whatever your task is, it could be menial, it could be sweeping floors, but do it because it needs to be done, and you do it with pride. Because if you do it with misery, that basically it colors the palette of your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you do with a stain of like disdain and misery, like that component, like I don't want to do this, or this is not like what I wanted to do with my life. If you can accomplish, like it's almost like we have these micro challenges in our life, and sometimes they're big challenges, and those challenges are meant to be met. And if we don't meet those challenges, we're almost not allowed to graduate. They're classes, like when you go to school and you get your good grades so you can pass that class. Doing a job that you might not like, being in a relationship you might not like. You might not like your parents, you know what I'm saying? You might not like a sibling, but getting over it with grace and handling it with a bit of, for lack of another word, just handling it with some grace and some dignity, that allows you to graduate to that next level and then you get to another level, and there's another challenge. So figure it's like a video game, and you're starting on the first. You're on the first the first challenge, and then you got to go to the second and the third, and before you know it, you know you become you get some kind of mastery. You become somewhat of an expert in life, or you're supposed to, in theory. That's the idea of growing older and growing wiser. Is is getting when you get wiser, you become a little bit more of an expert in life. Things are not supposed to bother you as much. It's supposed to be like water off the back of a duck's back. Like supposed to be able to handle things. But you see so many people who don't, who can't. Like as they get older, they get more agitated and more limited in what they're capable of handling.
Mhm.
And it's not supposed to be that way. You're supposed to see that those older people are supposed to be wiser, not more
Absolutely.
like cantankerous or angry or frustrated, which seems to be our cultural acceptance right now.
It's very true. They say, the energy that you emit you're gonna be surrounded by it. So if you continue to put out that same negativity, expect it to be around you. Expect those type of people, to come into your circle.
It's the law of attraction.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I would say that's even a component of what they call karma. Because karma, they say, is like, what did you carry over from a past life or whatever your past tribe or experience in another life, but it's also, I think karma is also the law of attraction. If you attract negative, if you put out negative and negative comes to you, that's a karma in a way. It's
Yeah.
it's a, it's a karma on a shorter timeline. Instead of experiencing karma over a lifetime or within multiple lifetimes, you experience karma within this lifetime in maybe hours or weeks or months or years, but it's still within our time reference.
Absolutely. And this comes down to the determination of the person. Like you were saying before, if you don't like something, if you still put in that same hard work, what you know is your skills, your talent, even though at that certain situation it's not what you want to do, or it might be a job that you don't like, but when you put in that same determination on hard work and you know what you're capable of doing, someone out there is going to notice that, and that might be an open avenue to a different pathway in your life.
Exactly. Exactly. It's I used to call it getting comfortable with the discomfort. Like that's how I used to define it myself, right?
Okay.
So if I found myself in an uncomfortable position, in some kind of discomfort, could be anything. Could be like whether you're working out, you're training, whether you know, you're meant to be in that discomfort, just sitting. You know what I'm saying? Don't flee from it. Don't lean into it. Just sort of experience that discomfort. See what it has to teach you about yourself, about your psychology, about your physical limits. You'll notice the more you get comfortable with the discomfort, the better you become at it. And more recently, I heard somebody say over the past year or two, they called it anti-fragility, which is an interesting way of putting it. In a society that's constantly trying to create comforts for us, whether it's when we created electricity or air conditioning. 100 years ago, we didn't have air conditioning or heating in the house.
Yeah.
People kind of had to survive with that natural discomfort. That's what was just part of being a human being. And in an attempt to make ourselves comfortable as a culture and as a society, we've made ourselves softer. So we've created fragility. And now we're sort of mimicking anti-fragility by maybe going to the gym and working out for 2 or 3 hours, pushing ourselves to like redlining, ourselves physically, mentally, not stopping. Some people will apply that to work. So
Yeah.
they'll become workaholics and they'll work too much and then they'll be miserable about it. But in a way, we all created our discomfort because we're we're not willing we're not willing to go without. Like we all want to. In a way, we're all trying to keep up with the Joneses at the end of the day. In one way or the other, nobody wants to be seen as basically borderline homeless person on the street. Um, but I am definitely intrigued and gravitate towards the minimalist movement, even though I find it harder and harder to get there.
Yeah.
But my natural tendency, my nature would be to go like minimalist. I could basically live in a 500, 600, 700 square foot box that has I've lived in studio apartments that literally have everything that I need within that space. That's all I need. I get up in the morning, I do push-ups, I do a little stretching, a little bit of yoga, go for a run, have my work desk, my music desk, my kitchen, my shower. I don't need much more, and my quarters to sleep. It's real simple.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is when people understand how once you have those a proper foundation like that, you put everything into perspective. It's like, what really extra do I need? You have a little comfort zone, maybe a extra room somewhere, but if you always have that foundation of what you need to get through your day, keep your mind and your body right, and also come home to a place that you feel comfortable in, there's not much more that you really need.
I categorize things as wants and needs.
Mm.
Definitely like what falls into the wants and what falls into the needs, Obviously, the needs will always take precedent over the wants. So paying your mortgage, paying your rent, you know what I'm saying, paying your transportation, things that you obviously need. And then the
Yeah.
wants are anything that exceeds that, like I mean, I can live on 2,000 calories a day. I want 4,000, 5,000, but then there's a repercussion for eating 5,000 calories a day and not working out. So as long as you can recognize that the actions that you take either have positive or negative results, you have to balance. You have to keep things balanced within the frame of the positive and negative, right? Never. You can always OD, and you can always underdo it as well. You don't want to be, you still want to be able to perform at your maximum capabilities, but whatever that is, um, as well. And so you don't want to like famish yourself and starve yourself and limit yourself that way. At the same time, you can't be like indulging either. You know what I'm saying? You can't be drinking alcohol and you can't be partying too much, especially as you get a little older. It's
Yep.
not, you start the consequences are that timeline is much shorter for consequences where you can recover. I used to be able to go out 3-4 nights a week, party, drink, do all that
And
stuff,
be
but
fine.
then it takes its toll, man. You're like, nah, man.
Yeah. You got to listen to your body.
Yeah, boy.
And I like that you spoke earlier about, as you get older, you're expected to get wiser because your experience, your season, you've seen things. So you should know ahead of time how to adjust and balance out your life.
Yeah.
That's not always the case with every older person. But I do have to respect, some of my elders because I did learn a lot from, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and also my parents. My father growing up, he worked out at home, and I've been a homebody for at least about a good 2 decades. I completely quit the gym a long time ago. Do everything at home. So,
Nice.
and that my father was, an early influence to, see that you can work out at home, you can work outside. You don't always need to be in a gym, you know, and just seeing that type of dedication, and then knowing that he was diligently working. He came home, make sure, take care of the family, talk with us and everything. My mom, same way, diligently working. And they both had their certain type of health kicks. But as I noticed now, as they're older, they've made those adjustments too, because I ate a balanced meal when I was younger, but it still had, you know, fried food, meat, and stuff like that. Nowadays, I'm strictly plant based. This month made 8 years now,
Nice.
and it all comes really down to seeing people, giving an example through their life, and also your own research and education.
Yep. Yeah, I was plant-based for about 25 years. I was I
Nice.
was vegan
Hmm.
for most of that time. I stopped being vegan about 20, no, I'm sorry, about 5 years ago. I stopped. I started to eat fish because
Hmm.
things work for some reason. I always say, like, we definitely live in some kind of simulation or some kind of matrix because they're constantly like, the system is constantly introducing things that will work for a while and then they stop working.
Yeah.
And then you have to adjust and you have to like reconfigure and figure out what works for you. And then you adjust and then it changes again. So veganism worked for me like it was magic, bro. It was like it worked for me on a physical level, on a mental level, on a
Hmm.
spiritual level. I mean, energetic, like energy wise, I was like, man, you couldn't put me down, bro. I used to be able to go to the gym for 2, 3 hours. I used to be able to like, I mean, I was like nonstop. And even like my spirituality, my ability to connect to things, I always sort of equated it to, imagine you have like a dish service on your roof and
Uh-huh.
people and they come and like pile debris, leaves, and garbage on top of it. You lose signal. Humans are
Right.
the same way on a cellular
Mhm.
level, right? So as we
Yeah.
detoxify and cleanse ourselves, we have natural, we're receivers for information and for being connected to things on a higher, more spiritual level. It's all there. It's just we're not tuned into it because we have blockages, whether they're heavy metals or whether they're, you know, phthalates or estrogen mimickers or whatever it might be, whatever toxin it is creating an imbalance in the system. So the system is running, out of configuration and can't read what's around them. And there used to be levels of intuition that I still have. I'm still pretty intuitive about things, but it's
Mhm.
like almost like an indirect intuition where before it would be very direct. I would almost know exactly things, and I don't know how I know it, but I know it,
No. Yeah.
and I was often correct. So that taught me to trust that. That's kind of what intuition is. It's a matter of trusting your own like gut feeling and also pattern recognition. I think there's a balance and understanding of pattern recognition as well as intuition and sort of combining it all and trusting yourself that enough and not being so proud that you're not willing to be wrong, right? It's
Very.
important to be wrong because nobody bats 100. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
we're
Nobody's
not going to be
perfect. Yeah.
100% correct.
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, you provide a lot of wisdom in the short time that I hope, somebody out there who's either tuning in or tuning in the future can, absorb that and possibly make a small change in their life that could go to something a lot greater. Um, in your music, I've always noticed that you have always been a very streetwise person. So, based off of what we already spoke about, um, how did you come to be who you are now? Looking back at how you grew up.
Definitely a combination of things, but I would say primarily my parents. Because going back to something you had said before, older people, we kind of assume the younger we are, the more we kind of assume that older people are wiser. But as I grew up, I learned that my parents in general, but my father primarily, was wise in some aspects, but really not quite as wise in other aspects. And what happens is you learn from both. You learn from what your parents do correctly, and you learn from what they do incorrectly.
Very
And
true.
then you apply both of those things. So when you see your parents make a mistake, you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Especially in like how they raised me and my siblings.
Mhm.
Like there's certain things I would never do for my kids or do to my kids. But then there's other things that I would do that they did. So I mean, there's that. And also my parents, they're both from East New York. My mother moved to Ozone Park when she was like 13 or 14, but they're from East New York. My father is from East New York. gangs. He grew up in gangs. He's been shot. He's been stabbed. He's like, I grew up around a father that was really like self-educated, um, very like, very sort of prideful, and a very like New York, Brooklyn, Italian street guy who was a tough guy. Like he's
Okay.
been through the mix. He was in Vietnam. He had 3 Purple Hearts in Vietnam. He's been in fights all his life. I mean, and it's not only stories that he told me, but friends of his that he grew up with who told me, that they've witnessed stories about my father, who's not a particularly big gentleman, maybe
Uh-huh.
about 180 pounds, 5'8", but can throw down. Has hands like hammers. And I used to ask him, I said, how did you knock so many people out? He used to box too. He goes, I said, was it power? He goes, I don't know if it was power as much as it was accuracy. It was when I wanted to hit something, I hit it. I could hit my mark. So there was sort of a and then as I got older, realizing that my father was acting like that due to traumas in his life in the past. So both of my parents realizing that their street savvy and their ability to deal with real life, maybe external aggressions, or people who were basically not looking out for our best interest, how they would deal with it, how my father would deal with it. These were not pushover kind of people. These were
Yeah.
like these are people who cut from a different cloth, who were like, you know, rough, but they still would had dignity. My father still dressed sharp. He still wore his gold bracelet, had his rings, had his custom uh, sweaters, wore slacks.
Nice.
Dressed up like a businessman, hair combed back, very sharp when he wanted to be. And then at the same time, like you mentioned, your father had a gym in the crib. My father had the same thing. We always had a heavy bag in the garage. We always had a weight set. So from the time I was about 8 years old, I would go down in the basement or in the garage, wherever the bag was at the time, and I would hit my father's old Tupperware bag. I would just for rounds. I mean, I do like 10, 15, 20 rounds, do push-ups, do pull-ups, hit the weights. By the time I was 15 years old, I was benching 200 pounds. You know what I'm saying? I was like, and and it came with that, like, we were being very physical, coming from physical people, my father especially. I was a very physical kid. Like I was very like, you know, hands on with my people, like when like exactly doing what boys would do, like you roughhouse,
Yeah.
you know, you play fight, you run around, you're very physical, and that's something I don't keep my kids from. Like in this day and age, they kind of try to deter that kind of behavior. But for me, I like my kids to be physical. Like I want them to have both. Like that's the balance, right? Being
Yep.
cerebral,
Mm-hmm.
having the being humble, having introspection, all those aspects. That makes a whole human. It's not just being one dimensional, a specialist, or focused in one area.
Yeah. Definitely. No. Salute to your family, because I love hearing stories like that, because everyone that comes up in a particular neighborhood, the not so great neighborhood, is not always a product of your environment. And to have Kuth the way your parents were, and also be in that environment, it's really it's a great example to see that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
And
good influence too.
yes. And then when other people see that, they see confidence. They see someone that's determined and not always flashy, or I'm too good or better than anyone. It's all in how you carry yourself. And salute to your parents on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's just a matter of like, well, you should have like, it's hard to say. Like a lot of times people might not have great parents, and I'm not saying I had, you know, 100% great experiences with my parents, but I also take the things that they did wrong, like I had said earlier,
Mhm.
things that I didn't like the way they treated me, and I took that as a lesson, something for me to then break those chains and not continue that cycle on through my family. You know, we carry these things on from generation to generation, traumas from the past that accumulate. And if somebody isn't self-aware enough, conscientious enough to stop that, that's going to continue to the next generation, and that's going to keep going on and on and on. And somebody's got to be the one to stop that, you know. And sometimes that means being the black sheep of the family, you know, or sometimes that means being outspoken when it's not comfortable. But that's when being comfortable with the discomfort comes in handy, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, if I'm speaking truth, it doesn't really matter, you know, as long as I'm speaking the truth and it's objectively true, and I'm not just being manipulative. I'm not saying things to control people. It's coming from a genuine place. That comes from knowing yourself well enough. That's what you say, like you said before, having confidence when you either walk in a room or you're around people, like having the confidence to be yourself without having to put on airs or some kind of act, you know?
Yep, absolutely. As you could partially see right now, I'm still dressed in my work clothes, and I normally walk around with a backpack and a fedora on as well. And that, you know, that's just how I am. You know, the criteria is pretty much business casual for working what I do. So this is just me. And when I first started working for this city, I used to work either a 10 to 7 shift or a midnight to 8 shift. And they used to make fun of me when I got off because first thing in the morning, I'm still dressed like this. They're like, you didn't loosen up your tie or anything? Like, I'm comfortable. You know, this is me.
Yeah, man. If you're comfortable with it, and it, you know, how you present yourself to the world is sometimes how you perform out in the world as well. You know what I'm saying? Like I know when I dress a certain way, you know, if it's right for the situation, and it not only is it right for the situation, but it's on that next level of sharp. Like it's tailored. Like, you know, that's one thing that my pops always taught me, you know, when you wear the cologne, you know, you don't wear the silver with the gold. You wear either gold or you wear silver. You know what I'm saying? You wear the collared shirts, you dress sharp, you know. Sometimes it requires suspenders, sometimes it requires a vest or a blazer, and to know how to dress for your body type is important too.
That's true. Yep. Yep. Now I want to, being what we're talking about, let's play the music video "The Strong" off your debut, "From Out of the Shadows."
Okay.
And then we're gonna talk a little bit about your debut after that.
Okay.
On occasion, I'm known to love the notoriety in a society, telling you the spice of life is variety. In my vicinity, where they testing your masculinity and emotions that make moments feel like infinity. I have no regrets, I'm changing nothing. No need for readjusting. Just watch a little closer who I'm trusting. Wisdom with age. My life's a book and every day's a page. A work in progress. I'm going through the human process. Poetic pagan, convicted based on accusation. Maybe I'll reawaken to the sound of my spirit breaking. One of the forsaken, a technological slave. Still like a man in the cave that got caught up in this wave. Spirited vocabulary, beat mechanic, words are the tools. Who didn't get wisdom in prison and put out of me school? So what you know about the terror of an esoteric, far from generic, a spiritual poet with your local cleric. Strong shed blood before they shed tears in hostile atmospheres where we pass the years and walk chop the fear. So we persevere till the struggle and the pain disappears. The strong shed blood before they shed tears in hostile atmospheres where we pass the years and walk chop the fear. So we persevere till the struggle and the pain disappears. I'm stuck between fantasy, reality, spirit, and salary. With guilty salary, some are conscious and battery, undermining my confidence, so I can't see the consequence of my actions and passion that's overriding my common sense. Stripped in the thought, good conditioning's the way it was taught. The day it was born was the same day it was bought. Just to be sold, yesterday's model is good, but he's old. Like being roll. In December, get left in the cold. A catatonic peasant, personality unpleasant. Physically, I'm here, but mentally not always present. It's the paradox of time. While in my prime, I'm wasting my mind. Need a better design to laying thoughts and words on the line. These are the observations of an average Joe, silent majority. Persuaded to be enslaved by so-called authority. We mix priorities, the buying time of passing years. Still the strong shed blood before they shed tears. Strong shed blood before they shed tears. In hostile atmospheres where we pass the years and walk chapter fears. So we persevere till the struggle and the pain disappears. The strong shed blood before they shed tears. In hostile atmospheres where we pass the years and walk chapter fears. So we persevere till the struggle and the pain disappears. The hunger, pain, and this feeling of dissatisfaction causing reaction, reacting to these causes with a passion. This novice not polished, eventually possesses knowledge on the road. Let's travel, walking barefoot with a muddy scholar. Addicted to dollars in public, all they do is holler. Appearances deceive you, best believe inside a squalor. Beyond good and evil, where every chapter has a sequel. Every sequel is a Polaroid that's capturing these people. Don't you want to be known for something more than a poem? Holding chrome jugs, being a pimp in the size of your home. Being a thug, what about love? Where is it gone? Besides that affection and bouncing all night in the club. It's an addiction, I'm spitting a deadly description. Deceptive when you listen, cause it doesn't follow a trend. Breathe easy, acceleration means we're close to the end. There's no need to pretend, philosophies to defend. Strong shed blood before they shed tears. In hostile atmospheres where we pass the years and walk chapter fears. So we persevere till the struggle and the pain disappears. The strong shed blood before they shed tears. In hostile atmospheres where we pass the years and walk chapter fears. So we persevere till the struggle and the pain disappears. Strong shed blood before they shed tears. Said the strong shed blood before they shed tears.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's a favorite video I shot. That was like I love that video. Yeah, that's the only track I produced on that project. Everything else was Marco.
Marco, yeah.
That one. That's the one track I produced. And Fred Focus was the director for that video.
Uh-huh.
That's my man out of Washington Heights. And I rented the car from Pennsylvania. The microphone I got from Queens. The drummer was from Williamsburg. And we shot it in my neighborhood of Red Hook that I was living in. Yeah, man, I was thinking of like how I basically put that together. I kind of went out and got all those pieces, and I had this vision in my head. And then I told Fred, let's shoot this here, you know? So everybody's doing the freestanding mic thing now, you know, for a while. Like that's kind of like the new thing. I was doing that back in 2014 and 2013, you know? Yeah.
Oh, man. Now, being that you are an MC and a producer, first, how did you link up with Marco Polo and Shy the Beat Yoda? And second, for your debut, what made you want to have another producer handle the majority of the production?
At the time, I wasn't really doing a lot of production myself. I wasn't that nasty yet, you know? I would have a gem here or there, like randomly, but not consistent enough to be able to make a whole album on that level. So not being the type to just put out like random, you know, I know I'm self-aware that like when I'm good and when I'm not, you know, and even from then until now, you see a difference, between my production and even my delivery now. Back then, my delivery was coming from a place of like that, you know, that Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx sort of staccato, high pitch, sort of like really projecting my voice out there, like you know, like using that style more than my style now. Which my old style was really hard to perform. Like when I would go and do all those songs like live, forget it. When I'm like, I want to talk about having to be physically fit because it's so dense lyrically. And I just started to like, you know, adjust my style to be more performance heavy, but also to emphasize the things, because for hip hop heads like yourself, you'll listen to the words, like really absorb it. But a lot of other people, they, especially now, man, they just kind of like it's more a vibe for them. You know, things are very cinematic now. Like things sound cinematic. So even like soulful boom bap or straight boom bap doesn't really like because people aren't really bouncing. They're not they're not partying. No, it's not club music anymore. It's not like you're making kind of like you have to be making a soundtrack basically. You
Yeah.
know, it's got to be cinematic now. So it lends itself to me talking more and storytelling in my style. As you know, I'm basically topically I'm on the same thing, but just my delivery, I created more space for emphasis, and I
Yeah.
slowed it down so people could really absorb. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
So
But
yeah, that's the difference between like that was the evolution from then, because that being my first project, and then slowing it down a little, especially because I was doing a lot of stuff in Europe. So slowing my English down for Europeans, because their English, you know, they don't, they understand English a little bit, but you can't speak too fast to
too
them.
fast, yeah.
And so the idea with my managers, like slow down a little bit, you know, like give them some space so they can understand. And I took that and I sort of like Molotov, my second project was sort of like slowed down. Well, actually, yeah. Then my mixtape was slowed down. Then Molotov, and then I just kept, you know. Then I kind of found my pocket for finding that balance between doing what I used to do and doing what I'm currently doing.
Okay. And the other part of my question was, how did you link up with Marco Polo and try to beat Yodas?
At the time, I bought an apartment in Clinton Hills, and Marco was living in Fort Greene, which are two neighborhoods next to each other. And I had my man. It's funny. I was working with Ayatollah. He lived in Hillside, Queens. So I used to go to his crib, and then he had his man who lived in the neighborhood. I think the kid's name was Eric. They used to call him E. He had a basement studio. So me and Ayatollah would go to his basement studio and work on music. And then this other kid who was cool with this kid E, his name is Drew Barron. He was another rapper, producer, singer. We met in E's crib in the basement in Queens, and he lived in Fort Greene. So at the time, he introduced me to Marco. So I became cool with this kid from Fort Greene. And then he introduced me to Marco, who was living there. And it was basically just, you know, all like New York studio connections, just meeting people through people. I'm like, oh shit, I live in that neighborhood too. So, you know, it was just a natural fit. You know, we were cool before music.
Yeah.
So we were like, you know, he was just kind of like on his upswing and getting his chops. You know what I'm saying? He had put out his album, you know, with his feature heavy album, and then he and I were working on random joints here and there, which sort of coalesced into From Out of the Shadows, and that's basically where it was. And I took cues on my production from Marco a lot at the time. Marco and I are very different. Like I worked with Ayatollah and I worked with Marco simultaneously. And both of them had very different production styles, almost diametrically opposite production styles. Marco was very technical. He knows like a machine, like an MPC, like the back of his hands. He knows engineering. He was like trained engineer, and he knew how to mix and he knew how to do all these. He was very technically savvy. Where Ayatollah was like very feel, like if it felt right, it was right. You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't have to be soundly engineered. Nothing was like completely. It was more like along the Dilla lines of production, you know. Which, in all honesty, I sort of naturally gravitate to, like more than that. I'm not like a technical. You know, like I'm more about feel, and that's what allows me to rap and write the way I write. You know, I go more on feel than being technical. And the same thing, once I started to see that there were other ways to produce that are less technically sound, but still work or more improvisational. That's what naturally I became better. I leaned into that more because I would get frustrated with trying to make everything, and then you're being technical. Things become very metronome like, very too predictable, and almost then you have to retrain yourself to then not be as predictable, to sort of like move things around so they don't feel as stiff. And why not just start not feeling stiff? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like having to do something, then undo it, then just do it the way in the undone way the first time. And that I learned from Ayatollah and Thelonious Martin working with him. Thelonious Martin was like almost like again, like from the Dilla School of Production. It was like a child playing with instruments, but it just sounded really dope. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more like jazz musicians, you know?
Yeah, I remember that when that Molotov dropped.
Yeah, it was a different, like I was on a different vibe. And the funny thing is, at the time, I remember DJ Eclipse playing a lot of it, and he was really feeling it because he said even at the time that had dropped in 2017, 16, there wasn't a lot of that, like that already, that Ninth Wonder, Little Brother era of sound was not as prevalent in the underground circuit. Like it was more along the we were starting to get into that cinematic zone of the Rock Marciano and the Griselda, and the, they hadn't quite popped yet, but it was like, it was more along the lines of just boom bap, like cacophonous, which is dope. Like, sometimes it's like, but sometimes, like when you have those swingy bass lines, like the Kev Brown, Dilla, like that, where the drums are swinging and the bass lines are swinging, and it's all kind of busy, but busy in a quiet way, as opposed to busy in a really noisy way. That I was still doing that, and that wasn't particularly prevalent at the time. So it stood out, which was a positive at that time,
Yeah, that's dope. I was gonna say, with your debut, is it Thinking of You Now?
Thinking of You Now was on Marco's his compilation project.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Stupendous Adventures of Marco Polo. It was like a last minute throw on that, and then that wound up going on my project as well. So we used it for both.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if that was like the very first time that y'all worked together, because I remember it being on Marco Polo's project a few years before your debut.
Yeah, we were already kind of in the mix of working with things, but we hadn't quite formed the project totally at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. So that actually happened with another joint. I was working on a project with DJ Skiz, and we had a couple of joints in the bag, but there was that one joint I did with Ty Ferris that he put on one of his I forgot the name of that album, but he had a compilation album, and he had taken that was going to be on our joint, and he put it on his compilation. It's like so far back, and there's so many songs I can't remember all of them, but especially compilation stuff. But it was that was another project that got repurposed, and I actually used that on I used another song from that off 6 Demon Bag, that Krondon, the song I did with Krondon, Cold Phrases. That was originally on another project, but I had put it on an EP, producer compilation EP that I put together. Yeah. So like, it's good to like be flexible enough to shuffle the deck when you need to, like sometimes like you have to be open enough to allow your music to become what it's going to become. Not try to be strictly like, I'm going to make this work. And that's exactly what Black Label Saga was. It was like, I had made a joint, then I made another one, and it kept like, everything seemed to be like sort of forming and becoming cohesive. And then I said, yo, I wanted to work with this producer. Let me work with that producer. I selected beats from Duke Westlake and then Coos, and I had a DJ Skiz that The Phantom Planet joint with Adonis, that was off the Skiz project. I put that on. So I started to put all these things together, and I realized, like, man, we can just do, like, we don't have to be stuck in a box, you know? Because that would happen to me sometimes. Like, I had projects that I had worked on that, if it doesn't feel right to me, then I can't put it out. There are elements that might feel right, maybe 25% feel right to me, or 50%. But I have to somehow take another 50% and put it together to make something whole. And it could be done. And that's where, like, I sort of like, I sort of rise to the occasion. Like, I want that. I like the challenge of, okay, what can I make around this?
Yeah.
You know, and it happens sometimes, like, two projects that come to mind of mine that just came out, like, they just worked. Like, I didn't have to tool it and sort of like go through all those contortions to make it like to fit, were Wisdom Wears the Crown. That was an EP that was pure like one mental flow state of consciousness that just from A to Z was just like, I didn't really have to think about it. It just happened. And then the other one was Saga Ganoush, the unauthorized project, the mixtape that I had put out, EP basically, of Alchemist, like loose joints off of his Israeli. I took a bunch of those instrumentals and just rapped on them on a weekend just to, because I had all these like rhymes in pocket. I wrote some, but some of them I already had. So we just rock on this, you know. So it was a quick turnaround, a sort of a boost after From Out of the Shadows, and so those are like kind of flow state projects for me, as opposed to me sort of overthinking it and then being worried about the mix and the mastering, and that takes the fun out of everything. Like the mixing and mastering, that's the worst part of like a project for me.
Oh, I'm beginning to hear that a lot now.
Yeah, that's tedious. It's getting a little better now with some technologies making it a little more efficient. But the whole like going back and forth and trying to get that right sound, and then you got demoitis in your ears, you hear it a certain way, and then but you also have ears like, you know, sometimes like on a morning where you're fresh, where you're like not tired, like you're well rested, and you hear your shit, you're like, dude, this is nasty. But then at night, when you're tired after a long day of work or whatever, you know, you're like, damn, this is trash, you know, like it's the same song. But it all depends on your personal vibes or your personal level of energy, you know. Music is a mood.
Now, when you listen to music, is there a particular piece of equipment that you listen it on? Do you play it in a car or anything like that?
No, I wouldn't say equipment is a thing that inspires or motivates me. It's more, I would say, the rhythm section of everything. Like I like every genre of music, but it's all the common thread within all the music I like is the rhythm section. If the drums and the bass line sound a certain way, you could throw all kinds of things on top of it. But if those are swinging the right way, if those sound, if they're the right groove at the right tempo, tuned the right way, man, you could throw anything over that. You know what I'm saying, and make it sound funky. So really, the common thread is the rhythm section. So like sometimes in my own production, I'll start with the drums. Sometimes I'll just start with the loop, because sometimes the loop wants to tell me how to make the drums or the how I chop a sample. And then now, like, I'm getting into more like starting with like just bass lines and then building around that and building in like what I call patchwork production. So I take a sound, stack a sound, and I keep stacking a sound and I listen. What is it telling me it wants next? I'm not telling it what to do next. So if I find like a hit, I listen to that hit over the drums, like whatever it might be, a piano hit or a string or whatever it might be. I listen to that, and whatever the next note has to be, I find the next, like I listen, and it'll tell me, my own head, without me thinking about it, it'll tell me what the next note has to be. And then I'll keep chaining what the next thing has to be. So there's different. I find different methods of production that keep it fresh to me. So sometimes I'll go back to one style, then I'll do it another way, and then I'll try another way. And sometimes I go back to making my soul style of production, then I'll make my really like cinematic stuff. So I kind of I mix it up. And on Black Label, you get a good mix of everything. You get some cinematic, really like dark, vibey stuff, and then you get the soul stuff, so more like the sun don't shine, no shine, or songs like that, which are really soulful, which are more sort of my I think my natural tendency is to make more like soulful sounding music, but I want to be able to do a little bit of everything, and I want to be able to fit the mood, you know.
Yeah. Now, growing up, is a lot of the music that you listened to back then you still listen to now, and part of your production?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, we're talking about like 80s R&B, huge influence on me. Like, I'm basically an 80s baby, so like, I grew up in the 80s, listening to whatever it might have been. Like, if it was the Police, or it was NWA, or it was Public Enemy. When Public Enemy #1 came out, and I think Red Alert played it, and I heard that. I didn't know the original sample, like the jazz sample, the song it came from. What was that? Wah, wah, wah. And then the drums kicked in, and it was just that, wah, just that frequency. It was just pure frequency. Man, it was like, damn, that was it. That was it. Then it was like EPMD, it's my thing. Rakim, check out my melody. I ain't no joke. Rakim was probably my biggest like influence into loving hip hop,
Uh-huh.
and then EPMD started me rhyming because their rhyming style seemed plausible to me. Where Rakim was just like he was almost, I couldn't wrap my head around what he was doing yet at that point. And then Nas was probably my foray into sort of like taking this serious. Like, this is what I need to be doing. I need to be telling my story as from both my personal perspective, but also my observational, perspective, like witnessing the world, seeing how that world applied to me, and then wrapping both of those things together in both an abstract and a poetic way, where we're not always so literal. I think sometimes hip hop, I feel like at some point it became very literal. Like, let me just tell you, like the abstract, or that poetry that you used to get in rock music, or even jazz, or like in R&B in the 80s. Like, it's all about love, but they're telling things in metaphors, like in ways. It's not always so like, I did this, and this, and then this, and this happened. It's cool, but that, like, I like things that like kind of cater to my own personal ADD, where things jump around and I got to listen to it like a pattern of rhyme. You'll say this, and then you'll say this, and immediately you don't understand why these two things to go together, but they do, because it's a subconscious stream of thought. We have a conscious stream of thought, then we have a subconscious stream of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tap into the subconscious stream of thought, you're saying something, but you're saying it in a way that's not as obvious on the first, second, or third take. And it also lends itself to somebody being able to listen to you on Monday and get something from it, and then listen to you on Friday and take away something else. Depending on their perspective in life at the moment, they'll hear something new. Like, there's layers to it. Like, there's layers to it emotionally. There's layers to it wordplay. There's layers to it, without being overly complicated at the same time. So it's like there's a fine balance that you have to strike. At least I feel like I have to strike a fine balance between being a dope lyricist MC, technical, that, but also having a feel and having a freedom, like in what you're saying and how you're saying it, like, so I try to like do all of that simultaneously. You'll hear me sometimes engage and sometimes just straight up lyricism. I have a couple of things coming out that are more like along those lines that cater to a certain ear. And then there's other stuff that caters to a different ear.
I definitely feel that. And I think, like you were saying, you definitely put that all on display on your two latest projects, the Black Label Saga.
Yeah, that was definitely my intention with that project. I talk about a little bit of everything on that. It was a little bit of, and I also the style. I play with my style a little bit on a lot of the songs. So, and also the production lent itself, like my own style of production, and then working with other producers, their style and their swing brings out a different aspect of what I do, and then my style. I find that pocket, like, obviously a lot easier on my style, but sometimes when you hear something and it just like those words start coming out, like I heard those Kruth beats and I heard those Duke Westlake beats, and I didn't even start rhyming, it just started rhyming, like I just started writing things. Like even now, like I've been writing for the past couple of days, I call it automatic writing, where things are just coming up and then I start writing them down. Now, obviously not on a pad, but I write them in my phone, and then I just kind of stack these ideas, and then I come in. The dopest thing since with home studios is like you come in and producing. I make a beat. I got these rhymes that I've been working on for the past couple of days. Let's see how they fit. You know what I'm saying? And then the fluidity of being able to look at them and not writing them in such a rigid way. I write them just as lines, like no real pattern. And then when I hear the beat, I start to form the pattern around those concepts and those words. So I find these different methods for getting to my goal, and I don't like to do one way for too long because it gets it becomes too much of like a chore, predictable, and I like to approach things in a different way each time.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of having everything at home, is if it's fresh in your mind and you want to try it out, you go right to it right there.
Yeah.
You got your mic, you got your production equipment.
And no added pressure of being in the studio time. Money, money's on the clock, it's on the clock right now. So, they just kind of want to get you in and out of there. So it's like, it's much better this way. Like it really gives you the opportunity to hone your craft in a way, but hone it from all the angles, whether it's the mixing and mastering or the way you want your sound to sound, the production, and experimenting. I experiment for days. Like I try different things. I try different tempos and different swings and even being more loose. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But at least I have the freedom to experiment.
Yeah. Being you, I was gonna say, I believe the track is it Just Another? Yeah, Just Another on volume 2. I like the soundscape that you provided on that one.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean by that's not a sort of that's what I call a very direct track, right? You have drums, you have a bass line, do 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 do. It's just this pulse through the song, and then you have that sound, like that one guitar that rides through it, and it's just it sounds both. So it's very kind of industrial sounding. It's an industrial sounding song. It's not like one of my more soulful songs, but I noticed that my more lyrical industrial stuff, it does something for people. Like that's some of my people's favorite song. Like they tell me, yo, That Just Another song. Or this one kid that he works for me, he's like, when I play that song sometimes, he says he does the parts, he does like the song. Like I watch it click in with people, like
Uh-huh.
just the background. Like I put it on in the background and I see what songs click with people, and I kind of have an idea what works because I have my own biases when it comes to my music. So there's things that I like, and it always seems to be the things I love the most are the things that people don't like, but the things I don't like the most are the things that people like. It's so I can't call it all the time. I can't call what people are gonna like. That's why I do a little of everything.
Yeah. Mm. And you talked about your early influence in MCing. Um, what about your production? What was some early influences, and what made you want to start producing?
Oh, I would say like my earliest production influences were Pete Rock, Primo, Large Pro. If any producer was on Illmatic, Tribe Called Quest, anything Q-Tip did,
Hmm.
on both Low End Theory and Midnight Marauders, sort of those bass lines and those drum lines and stuff, and then obviously like when Illmatic came out, you had all those different production styles, but they were different, but they all worked together. So that was probably my biggest. But what made me think I could like really do it, like what made me understand production was working with Marco and I had told him because they had such different, like I said earlier, different production styles.
Yeah.
And then working with Thelonious and being in the studio with Knots, I realized that I could trust myself, do what I want to do what I like to do. Like my drums don't have to sound like Primo drums. My bass lines don't have to sound like Knots bass lines.
Hmm.
They're dope, but I don't need to sound like them, and I don't want to sound like them because I want to sound like me.
It's like
You know what
yourself.
I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to mimic, and that's kind of a problem that I think happens. Like people get really good. Some people it's like it's a double-edged sword because some people are really good at mimicry, and mimicry will get you in the door, right? Because you can mimic what's hot at the moment, but do you ever really define yourself as an artist when you're engaged in cloning yourself
Hmm.
after other people? And I never really wanted to clone myself. So honestly, like I'm not a connoisseur of underground hip hop because I never really wanted to be influenced by any one particular sound. Now there are albums that I love that are my go-to albums that are like, whether it was early 2000s, 2010s, until now. Like I have albums that I consider great albums that are classic, like sort of underground, but I never let them influence me, you know.
Okay.
Um, so like, but I never wanted to listen to too much. Like I never really like took in the whole scope. Like there are people who are like experts, like they know like everybody that comes out like constantly. Like I always say, like shout out to DJs, man, because the amount of like music that they have to like listen to now
Yeah.
is more than ever. And I hear DJs sometimes mention how many albums they get in a week and they have to listen to. And I'm like, man, God bless. But that's their lane, Their lane is mixing and that they love to be in front of the turntables. So that requires of listening and absorbing all this music. So shout out to them. But I don't have the bandwidth. Not plus I am also getting my own creating my own music. I'm getting a dose of music all the time, and I'm getting a dose of my own expression constantly. So I do listen to my own music a lot. I do because I want to see what I could do better and what I
That's
did
important.
right.
Hmm.
So I'm studying myself too, at this point. But yeah, I mean, I learned from a little from everybody, but I don't like. I learned like I said, what I'm capable of doing. I learned to be free by listening to other people. Like,
I get that. Mm. what I was going to say is listening to so much music on average every week right now, because I usually pay attention to what's coming out. I would say on average it's anywhere from 60 to over 100 projects that come out a week. And that's just hip hop alone that we're talking about.
Yeah, I see it. I can see it coming across like my feed, whether it's YouTube or Instagram, and I just see like so much music constantly. It's like, man, it almost gets like discouraging, man, because it's like you're just a drop in the ocean at some point, like, man, I'm going to put it, honestly, I have like 5 or 6 projects lined up, EPs and LPs between now and early next year to drop. But but I also feel like I just seem to be dropping singles, because singles seem to be like the head of the spear. You throw like a single out there and it's just like the appetizer. So I've been sort of like punctuating on both ends, like bookending a project with an EP project, another EP, or single, LP, EP. I have all these different like ways of releasing music, but I wind up having these like spurts where I don't drop, where all of a sudden I stop. Not that I stopped making music, but I stopped releasing music. And I think that has to do more with just my personal life, like having kids, having, just things like,
Balance.
yeah, finding that balance and not putting out as much, because I get stuck in the idea of having to put out a project. If I don't have the bandwidth to build a project, then drop singles, man. Just keep dropping singles. Drop a Lucy here, Lucy there. I mean, give an exclusive to this person, exclusive there. I could be doing that all day. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And then, from there, maybe something, I'll get motivated, inspired to like, in like a week or a month or 2 months or whatever it is, to make a project,
And that's smart to do it that way, because you're still keeping your name out there without it being a load of projects or just songs.
Yeah. Yep.
And I always
And it
got to
doesn't take all that energy either. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, we went from radio shows, through the airwaves, to now we have the radio shows through the internet. So I got to give a shout out to all the DJs out there that continuously are taking advantage of the social media platforms, as well as the Twitch app, and continuously putting out the hip hop music that we're listening to.
They keep it alive. They're keeping it alive right there. Yeah. But so always good, man. Like, I do everything. I do the Bandcamp and the SoundCloud, and it's on all the streaming platforms, etc. But you don't get, like, it's very hard to get feedback, like human feedback, through those things. Like sometimes, people just listen to Spotify or they'll go on Bandcamp and I'll see like all these plays and people buying stuff. You get feedback through that, but like hearing a DJ spinning it and cutting it, and then, you know what I'm saying? And like it engaged with other music back to back. It's like, it's on the playground now. You know what I'm saying? It's in the game. Like, so it's not just a thing standing alone by itself. It's part of an ecosystem. And the DJs create that, which is, sort of, are they the unsung heroes right now? I would say so. Probably, most likely, the DJs are sort of like, they're giving us all that shine,
Yep, absolutely. Now, in your childhood, you mentioned your father having doing the boxing, and you also practicing as well. 2 projects dedicated to athletes, Hagler and also Agassi.
Yeah.
Where did one, what other sports do you listen, watch, or are into? And then what was the motivation behind those two projects?
I mean, honestly, I'm strictly a boxing guy. Like
Okay.
I do follow some MMA stuff now. Like I will watch some fights because I understand it more technically. Um, but I've always been like a boxing fan, and I used to fight. I used to box. I used to box for Star City, PAL,
Nice.
Jimmy Yo, Andre Rosier. Andre Rosier was my trainer. Um, so I used to fight, and so I've always like because it's something I do. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard for me to be into a sport if I don't do it. Like if I played basketball, I'd watch basketball. If I played football, I'd watch football because my brain works needs context. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to apply the skill that I'm seeing, so I understand on all
Yeah,
dimensions.
in action.
You know, even how it feels to get in the ring. Like how it feels in the locker room, like the nerves, and then the walkout, and then the walk up the stairs, and then to be in the ring, and then how like when you're in the ring, all of a sudden the crowd is just gone, and now it's just you and that person. And the reason why I chose Hagler because I always liked Hagler's demeanor in the ring and outside of the ring. He always held himself like a stoic, like a stand-up guy, you know, except when he lost to, and arguably unjustifiably to Sugar Ray Leonard when he lost that fight and he basically was done with boxing. That's kind of when he lost his cool. But
Yep.
other than that, I like that focus, that tenacity. He was just like a hard worker, blue collar guy, background, and got into boxing. And I just liked his style, man. I liked his straightforward style. Don't get me wrong, like Leonard was a slick fighter, but he was always on his bicycle, and it was impressive because he was super fast with his hands, super fast with his feet. And then Hearns, which were all part of that sort of that era of fighting. Hearns was like that tall, lanky, like that's why he was like an assassin. He'd snipe you out from the outside with those long arms, and he'd pick you apart slowly.
Yep.
And then the other one who was part of that sort of that grouping was what's his name? I'm drawing a blank on him from Panama. No Mas.
Oh.
I'm trying to blank on his name for some reason.
Mm-mm.
But whatever. But those styles of fighting, like those very direct, sort of like I'm going to take your shots, but I'm going to fire back. Was always like super impressive to me. Even though like, and honestly, at that time in fighting, I say, yeah, pre Floyd Mayweather and post Floyd Mayweather, Pretty Boy Floyd, style of fighting, where when Floyd Mayweather became a defensive fighter, it influenced everybody else to become more back foot defensive fighters. Where before Mayweather kind of blew up, it was still guys. I mean, you had Roy Jones and Pernell Whitaker and those guys and James Toney, who were super slick fighters, Bernard Hopkins in the pocket, or they were super athletic and very quick and make you miss 1,000 shots, frustrate the hell out of you, and then counterpunch you. Duran is who we're thinking of.
That's right. Yep.
But the previous to that, guys were sort of front foot fighters. So they lean in on their front foot, on their lead foot, and they would basically just take a beating and then just to beat the shit out of you. You know what I'm saying? So it's not the smartest way of fighting, but it's very impressive from the standpoint of surviving. Like of standing up. Let me grab my charger real quick.
Okay.
So yeah, that led me like that's why boxing became my thing, became my mainstay personally. And I love doing it. I love fighting, but I knew it wasn't going to be a career for me. So I stopped fighting, at 25. I was like, ah, shit, man, let me focus on making some money, Dude, like, how much of this, there used to be guys in my gym who were amateurs and they were getting punchy, like they were slurring their words. They weren't so clear, like you could tell something was wrong.
Taking
And
effect.
yeah, and I picked up on that and I was like, I don't want that to be me, like I'm not trying to do that. Oh, and then you were asking me about Agassi. So
Uh-huh.
I always said to myself, if I was going to play another sport, it would have been tennis because I like the one-on-one component. It's you and your opponent. There's no team. There's no bench. You're in it until you lose or win. There's no fallback. So psychologically, that kind of feeds into my personal tendency for like being a lone wolf in a way. I'm not the best team player. I'm not like a jerk or anything. I'm not a dick, but I'm also like, I'm kind of like the X-Men in a way. Like I'm Wolverine. Like I'll come in and work with you and we'll do something dope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be over here, like at the end of the day, doing something that, what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, that's why I never played tennis, but then and then the aspect of the Agassi era, like how Agassi was that sort of prodigal son. He was in tennis. He was great. He was flamboyant. He was charismatic. He had a lot of style.
He was great promotion for tennis.
Yeah. He was a character, man. He was like, and then he left tennis, and then he came back, and he was bigger when he came back without all the extras. So it was like this sort of like this phoenix, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. It was Icarus. He flew too close to the sun, burned up, came back down, but made he made a comeback, and it was both of those careers that he had were impressive, and he left because he didn't like the lifestyle that he had created, and he wanted to according to his own writing, he didn't like who he had become, and he wanted to find himself. So I like that aspect, a very impressive career.
Yep. Definitely. You you once mentioned on your Instagram, I'm gonna read it real quick. You said, when I rap, I'm talking about myself and the way I interpret the world, my spiritual, political, financial, family relationships, and violence in the name of protecting what's mine, family, friends, self. It's sincerely how I think.
Yeah, there's no, I don't put meaning none of it is from ego or bravado. It's just, and it's all kind of cloaked in more of a spiritual aspect. My connection to something higher. My connection to something higher dictates my behavior here in the physical world. Mm-hmm. So I believe in being fair and being just, but I also believe in not being taken advantage of, not being cheated, not being lied to, not being manipulated, not being gaslit. Like all of those things, there's the duality of it, right? So there's a system of virtue that we either learn or we have sort of innately somehow, what's right and what's wrong. There is it's not subjective. Like some people will say right and wrong is subjective, but there are universal right and wrongs. There's no two ways about it. So in all reality, it's when everything I do is shrouded in my spiritual connection. So when I say something, I have to say something from my truth or my heart, how I objectively see the world or how I subjectively see it. and not from a place of like ego or 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 some kind of like I'm trying to prove something to somebody. You know, I don't need validation. I just wrote a lyric recently. I said I don't need validation. Like a lion doesn't need validation from the hyenas. You know, like so. If you live with your truth and that truth is noble, right? It's not lying or cheating from people. Then you can walk with confidence, and when you can walk with confidence, you don't have to look over your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can read a room, and then you could walk in that room.
That's important.
Yes, and it's not about controlling the room, but it's about knowing exactly how you fit into that room. You know, you can walk into a room and be like, "I'm here." You know, like Kanye West has always been known for sort of like walking in the room and like so being awkwardly charismatic, saying something out of line where everybody's just shaking their head, like, "Who is this guy?" You know, like there's he's not subtle in the art of it, but that's his style. You know, like there's a subtle art as well. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love that you also mentioned that, because that also comes to your subconscious of knowing, is this a place that I need to be at? You know, do I feel comfortable in this place? And make that decision of, do I stay and continuously be awkward, or maybe have a situation that I know that I should have left and it would have never happened? You know, these are the type of decisions that you can make off of your gut feelings. And I don't think a lot of people take their heart into mind when it comes to where they are, because of, like you said, a person that's boastful like that, that's what they want, no matter where they are.
Yeah, well, I mean, humans have a tendency to personalize everything, right?
Mhm.
Personalize all experiences when not all experiences are personal. It's just not. Sometimes it's just situational. You know, we've all walked into a place where like this ain't my place. You know what I'm saying? And like that's one thing that's a pet peeve of mine, and I just couldn't wrap my head around. I could never understand like if you went out to a club and they didn't let you in the club, I didn't take it personal. Like, okay, I don't fit in here. But other people would they wild out. They
Yeah.
get tight about it. They make a scene if they didn't come back and shoot the damn place up, or make a like you always hear about those stories. Like if people don't want you there or you don't fit in there, just don't go. Like
There's always
that's one thing.
options.
Huh?
I said there's always other options.
Exactly. Like that's what I mean about people personalizing. They take these slights as like some personal thing against that. It's a fragility of ego, Like they fold up so quickly that all of a sudden they question their own existence. It becomes an existential crisis for them, Like
Yeah.
because of what, Like, and that's what I didn't understand about like, and this is like controversial, but if I went somewhere and being Italian and Puerto Rican, and I went somewhere that didn't want me there. If I went to a place where it was all Indian people, and I didn't quite fit in,
Mhm.
I kind of like I wouldn't feel threatened or anything, but I kind of walk around like, okay, this is it for me, and I leave, Or if I was around Chinese people, or I was around whoever I was around, if it didn't fit, it didn't fit, and I was like, it's not a big deal. But I found people that I know like find that a hard adjustment to make. Like they really like, to them it's so personal that what are you taking a person for? A, they don't know you. B, you don't know, and you don't know them. So you don't know like, and anyway, if they're willing to like, if they're a certain way, they just showed you that you don't want to be around them anyway.
Yes.
So it's dualistic in nature. You they don't want you around, and they show you that you don't want to be around them. That's all. Like when you're growing up in New York, like You knew there were certain neighborhoods you couldn't go to. Like
Yeah.
unless you checked in with somebody, unless you knew somebody in the neighborhood and you were sort of like roaming it with other people. You know, I grew up in Canarsie, but when I went to Bed-Stuy, if I wasn't with somebody that I was connected to in Bed-Stuy, there was possibly a problem. You know, like they look at me like I was either a cop or like, what the fuck you doing here? You know what I'm saying? It was always something, and I never took it personal. It just is what it is. You know, it's like so. You know, you just learn. That's how you learn to navigate these things. You know, you learn to navigate people and places.
Man, great talk. You know, I really, enjoyed knowing your experience, and also that we have, similar like minds of, as we gotten older, understanding the world and how to interact with other people, and knowing our faith of how we navigate through our lives. Definitely enjoyed that. But
yeah, I mean, despite what the media tells us about the world, we have more in common than we have, differences. That goes with almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the illusion that we get through social media and media in general about the chaos in the world and what tries to provoke a fear response in us, it's not real, because when we leave our houses every day, when we go outside and we interact with people, people are people. They're the same people that they were 20 years ago and 30 years ago. It's the same thing. People might be a little edgier, but they're still people.
Absolutely. Before we go, I want to play your latest music video, All Praises Due, off the Black Label Saga Volume 1. And then when we come back, I want you to explain to the people how you got the name Saga.
Okay, let's do it.
That's it. All praises due. All praises due to the Most High. All praises due. Yeah. All praises due to the Most High. All praises due. I said, all praises due. Be patting the planet and heavens on my DNA. World 1 feet away, telescopic sight, trying to see the way. Light the path so I won't stray. Foundation solid so I won't sway. In this storm, chaos and melees. Every day I think I might lose my blessings. My skills memorize the lessons. 360 luminescence, 180 back again. 90 degrees of darkness. 45 with the red dot in the closet. Need room to breathe, faith to believe. My spirit under siege, but always have the weapons I need. Prevail before they drop the curtain. Nothing guaranteed unless certain. Sometimes if you want to teach a man, you have to hurt him. Bear the burden, spare the rod, and you spoil the child. Redirect the energy that's wild and turn it down. Turn it heads and pages, embracing the greatness. Leave places better than you found them. All praises due. All praises due. From the old ways to new ways. From you to your old age. From booze to the bouquets. One love had a two-face. From your fit into your shoelace. So don't misconstrue me judging you as some true hate. All praises due. From the old ways to new ways. From you to your old age. From booze to the bouquets. One love had a two-face. From your fit into your shoelace. And don't misconstrue me judging you as some true hate. Astronomical, unit, chronicle, philosophical movement. Stoic plumage with a bird's eye. I'm fly influence. Only trans around here is lucid. Feminine women are feminist. Venomous men hating. Go tell your therapist. A specialist. Empirical data and evidence. How we draw conclusions. Most of these bitches are unintelligent. They say it's nurture, I say it's nature. You're born an asshole, inherited karma tendencies. You pay for your pass roll. IQ is dropping, people progressively getting stupid. Bow man, I slay these dragons. These darts are not from Cupid. Love it or leave it, there's levels. I unlock achievements. I'll put a stop to your grievance. I'm the antecedent. They say anybody could do this, anybody better than nobody. Dismember operations, my flow is no hobby. A masterclass in exercise and exorcism. Check the boxes, checking pants, never check on how my ex is living. All praises due from the old ways to new ways, from you to your old age, from booze to the bouquets. One love had a two-face, from your fitted to your shoelace. So don't misconstrue me judging you as some true hate. All praises due from the old ways to new ways, from you to your old age, from booze to the bouquets. One love had a two-face, from your fitted to your shoelace. So don't misconstrue me judging you as some true hate.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's that second verse. I went ham on that second verse.
Yeah, I like how you on that track you came with the delivery. It was like more. It felt like the first verse was in a more sincere, emotional aspect, and then second verse was more brash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. That was the intent, right? You come in, you ease into it, and then on the second one, you're just like, okay, now let's get serious, you know? Yeah.
Nice. Last question of tonight. The origin of your name, Saga.
Well, I mean, look, the Saga as a name is like, if you're building a life, what life would you want to build? You would want your life to be a saga, right? Like your life from beginning until your end is, if you can sort of like write your memoir or write the stories of your life, like all the little components, like the little aspects of like from the time you could remember till the time you were maybe 10, your influences, you see. So it's not necessarily that my name is Saga, but my life I consider a saga. So sometimes when you see Saga 718, it's like this epic journey through Brooklyn, or from a person from Brooklyn. So it's Saga 718. I mean, it's not officially 718, but I call it. I use a 718 because, you know, you could call me by my name, by my birth name, because that's my name. Like, it's not like I'm not trying to be that, but at the same time, the whole encompassing idea and concept of my life, I like to call a saga. So I call that whole thing a saga. You know, whether it's my music, whether it was me boxing, it was me making music, or it's me being in business, or me investing in real estate, or me, like, it's all me starting a family. And then that saga then expanding into my own family, into my children, and then their children. And you know what I'm saying? So it's like how this journey, right? This journey that's a story. That's the idea of the name. That's the origin of the name. You know?
Like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, Black Label Saga Volume 1 and Volume 2 are out now, with production by Saga, as well as Kooth, DJ Skiz, Trox, and also Duke Westlake. Definitely go out and support that. I put it in the comments, and also I will put it up once again for everyone to see. It's right on this Bandcamp. Saga718music.bandcamp.com.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I appreciate the music that you've been making, and like I said before we got on there, I've been listening to you for quite some time. I think it was definitely before Molotov came out, and I want to say it was, I'm not sure what the first music video that you dropped off of from Out of the Shadows, but I think it was either I or City Streets that
It was City Streets.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
that was the first one. That was the first single.
I think that was the one that caught my attention, and then from there, you know, continuously been listening.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate that, man. It's like I said, man, especially like now, like it's always good to get feedback. Like when you tell me that, those things kind of keep me inspired and motivated to keep doing what I'm doing, you know, because sometimes we exist in a bubble, right? You know, like, and you don't quite hear things, you know, even from like your own people. Like it's like,
Yeah.
you know, you get some feedback, but it's good to hear it from like a neutral source, like somebody like outside, you know, like and don't get me wrong, I get feedback, but it seems like the algorithms or whatever it is getting harder and harder, like tighter and tighter. It's like to sort of get your music. I don't know. I just can't see the metrics as much. Like I can't see what's happening, or so I feel like sometimes I'm flying blinder than ever, you know. But yeah, this is important, man. I do things like this, and you tell me you've been listening for a long time because you know they say sometimes like you never know who's listening, you know.
Yep. Hmm. Yeah, I didn't get a chance, but I do have Molotov on that clear smoky vinyl. I didn't get a chance to go through and check, but I do have a copy of it.
Yeah, I mean it's good to listen to too because you know from Out of the Shadows and Molotov, and then like the progression of the music too. You know, like how it went from like one style because it was like 10 years ago or more, like that the original style, and then how it developed. Like you could see it develop, and how concepts and how confident things became, especially like with my own production and you know being confident in my own like my own writing, but also my delivery over my own music. You know, it's like it's finally becoming this like it's getting that blade is getting sharp and sharp, and like you know I'm very like sort of proud of it, you know, like of my growth, because I'm honest enough with myself to say if I wasn't getting better at this, I would just hang it up. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I know I'm getting better, so that drives me, because I'm like, okay, where am I going to be in a year from now? You know what I'm saying? If I'm this good right now, like, and I'm getting better, you know, that's like anything else. You know, it's like progress, man. Progress is a motivator. You know.
It's in the same vein as getting older and getting wiser.
Exactly.
You improve your skills.
Becoming a master of the craft.
Yep. And I think I didn't grab it before, but I think this was the Ty Farris album that you were talking about. The No Cosign, no just cocaine.
Yeah, no, I'm on one of those joints. Yeah, me. I think that's with me, Ty, and Sage Infinite are on that track together. I think that's that track.
Yeah.
No, I'm on there's a Skiz album. I got the CD somewhere around, but
the high powered one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that one has a me and Ty Farris joint on it too. And then me and Ty Farris have a joint on the Apollo Brown project. The Apollo Brown's got a artist compilation project as well. I can't remember the name of that.
Yeah, I think it was Granger, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and we're on. We have a joint on that. That's the first joint we worked together on. Actually, Apollo introduced us. He wanted me on the track, and Ty goes, "You two would sound good together." So we did that track for his project, and then I asked him to be on on one of mine, and they asked me to be on one of his, and then he's been on another one on my Gutter Snipe project too. He's been on.
Networking with other talented artists, you know, I love that.
Yeah, well, like, you know, I like doing both, man. I like you know, working with you know, the sort of like the known brands like the Crondons and the, you know what I'm saying, like those like guys like Blue and stuff like that, and Fashion. But also like working with the sort of like lesser known hungry guys like myself. You know what I'm saying, like. Because there's a certain hunger, there's a certain like understanding, you know, like we're all trying to make it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what it
We're all
is. Yeah,
trying to get to that level. You know, like we're not Freddie Gibbs and we're not Crondon level, but we're all trying to get up there. So I do it. I like working with both, but at the same time, like I rise to the occasion a lot of times. Like I'm never trying to outshine anybody. Like I'm always just trying to do what works for the song, best for the song. You know, best for both of us. You know, like it's not like to me, it challenges me. Don't get me wrong. If I'm gonna rap with somebody, I want my shit to be good, so I'm gonna elevate. You know, but I'm not like trying to blow somebody out of the water. I'm not like I'm going to do this first 10 times until I smash you. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about a collaborative effort to make the, my ego doesn't want me to like ruin the song. It's important that the song is the most important thing to me. It's like the primary goal is to make the song like as dope as I can.
substance, longevity, memorable songs.
Yeah.
I agree. Definitely. Saga, once again, thank you for speaking with us at HHDG Media, and for all those tuning in. I appreciate y'all tuning in as well. Floor is yours. Give you shout outs and let everyone know where they can reach out and support as well.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me, man. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to like the chat. I'm just basically my music's available everywhere on all streaming platforms. You could, instead of just Saga, put Saga 718 in anything in Bandcamp or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and mine will come up under Saga 718. So you won't get lost on all the other Saga stuff out there. Other than that, just like support, comment, share, like all that stuff. It's free to comment. It's free to share, to repost. That costs nothing, And honestly, any money I make from it, it goes right back into making more music. Like buying a piece of equipment or paying my PR guy Jerry. All that money that come to me goes back into the music. It's not like going into into like a nice car or clothing. It's just going into it's just helping moving with the music and pushing it out there. So thank you. Thank you for everybody for checking me.
Thank you. And on behalf of our HHDG Media crew, we're going to say peace.
Peace.